高機能かつデザイン性の高い掃除機などで知られるダイソンの創業者ジェームズ・ダイソン氏がテレビ東京の単独インタビューに応じました。今回ですね、このダイソンさんの自伝の発売に合わせてということで、最近ですね、エレクトリックビークル、電気自動車にダイソン挑戦したんですけれども、そこから撤退することにもなりました。その撤退の理由などについても詳しく語ってくれました。Sir James, thank you very much for joining us today. We are very honored here to have you. And actually, I strongly remember in 2019, it was my great pleasure to cover the Dyson Institute and to interview you and also stay overnight the students' dormitory called Pod. It was it was a wonderful experience as a journalist from the country of manufacturing. At that time, you mentioned many times in my interview, there was a shortage of engineers. So how's the training of engineers at the Dyson Institute going?
Well, it's going very well. It's interesting because after the 4 years, they're very experienced engineers because they've been working with our engineers and scientists for 3 days a week for 4 years, and they've been doing their academic studies. And I'm happy to say we're the most oversubscribed university in Britain. We have something like 15 applicants for every place. And by the way, they get paid. And some of them have cars and they have no debt because we provide all the tuition. So it's been a very interesting thing, I think, from experiment, if you like, from every point of view. From our point of view, we get these wonderful, enthusiastic young undergraduates who become very experienced graduates for us. And by the way, we pay them a lot more when they graduate than we do a graduate that's joining us from outside.
I see. And have you got enough engineers?
No. We never have enough engineers.
Indeed, yeah.
I mean, we're trying to show to the outside world what an attractive career engineering and science are. It's very, very exciting, but I think it's very difficult because there's no television programs on it. There are no films about it. It's very difficult to show that it's an attractive thing to do. But I can assure anyone watching it that it's the most exciting profession and the most interesting life. And by the way, research shows that engineers are happiest in their job compared with any other profession.
Yeah. It's a shame that the Top Gun Maverick is about a movie, not for the engineers, but for the pilots, right?
Exactly. I'm afraid it ever was thus. We need to change that. We need to have stories about engineers who make these exciting breakthroughs and make flying at those sort of speeds and turning at those sort of speeds. We should be showing how exciting it is to create those things.
Many Japanese are wondering and are really eager to ask you about your EV project. In this book, the development of EV was, page 228, the valuable learning experience for the future. So there were all valuable lessons for the future in the page 228. So could you tell us a lot more about what is the biggest lesson for you from the development of EVs?
Yes, I mean, it was a fascinating project to do, and we did it because we are experts in new technology electric motors, and also we've developed new technology solid batteries. So it seemed, and we're concerned very much with the environment and capturing pollution. So doing a car seemed a very natural thing to do, and I think it was. I think the car we did was a great success. It went 1,000 kilometers on a single charge. But the problem is that nobody makes any money making electric cars because electric cars are very, very expensive to make, particularly ones with a large battery pack.
So about the battery, on page 213, you said, at Dyson, our scientists are working hard on a new generation of compact and highly efficient solid-state batteries. Could you tell us how far is the goal for you? To that goal?
Well, we've done it technically and chemically. We're building the factory. First factory we're building is in Singapore to make those batteries. So it's underway. And, to a certain extent, we couldn't have done both the batteries and the car. So at a certain point, I had to make a choice. And unfortunately, the choice was to drop the car, but continue with the batteries and concentrate on bringing out other products. So we're able to do more products and we're able to do the batteries, but unfortunately not the car.
And did Dyson have an advantage when considering the structure of the automotive industry? Could you tell us your view towards the automotive industry, the structure thing?
We had a disadvantage because we were starting from scratch, and to a certain extent, people who supplied us with things obviously saw an opportunity to charge a bit more because we were new, and also our volume was relatively low, so we were kind of less attractive to them because we couldn't offer them promise them huge volume.
And did the electric vehicle project force Dyson to make trade-offs?
I'm sure it must have, because it was a big project and I worked half of my time on it and a lot of our engineers were working full time on it. So yes, it was a disadvantage in that sense, but a huge advantage in that most of the engineers and the staff working on that car have come over to the Dyson side of the business, doing our vacuum cleaners, hair dryers, and our new zone purifiers, but and developing batteries, all the other projects we're doing. So we've had this influx of talent. So there's a disadvantage and an advantage, as so often happens.
And do you think, is it still a market worth challenging for the entrepreneurs like you in your youth? Do you have any advice for them?
Oh, it's much easier now than when I started. I mean, you think that I might say that to show how difficult it was. But nowadays, there's lots of money for startups, and there's a really good environment for startups. When I started back in the 1970s, there was no money for people like me starting up, and nobody thought it was worthwhile doing it. So it's a really good environment now, and I would encourage people to do it. It's a very, very exciting thing to do. And you can borrow money, and there are angel investors who want to support startups.
Is there any possibility that in the future, the Dyson is going to try the EV market again? Not the near future, but some... Possibly,
and particularly because I'm passionate about it, because I've been concerned with pollution, particularly diesel exhaust pollution, for many years.
And in the book, you mentioned your favorite Honda Supercar and Sony Walkman, and you also write that Japan has a unique and illustrious history when it comes to innovation. But however, to be honest, it seems to me that the Japanese industry manufacturing are still struggling to make design and the technology come together, to crystallize those two factors together. In the page 185, you said, in those days, this is when you try to sell the certain old type of cyclone machine in Tokyo, and you are searching for some, managers in Japan. And in those days, Japanese businesses were very traditional, and the older you were, the wiser you were considered to be. And I feel, being honest, it's still the same. Can you give us some reaction on that?
It's a very big question. Yeah, I mean, no, let's firstly say that, Japanese companies, Honda and Sony, for example, and I've got here my original underwater Sony Walkman, which I've had for many years, a treasured possession. They were, Sony and Honda were inspirational companies for me. Honda for its innovation, and in particular, its continuous improvement, so that everything worked really well. And my Honda 50, which I had when I was a student, was a remarkable motorbike. It never went wrong. It's very economical, very cheap to run. It was a brilliant vehicle. And Sony, with their brave, Sony wanted to bring out a tape recorder, which didn't record, it just played back. I mean, that's a very, very brave thing to do. Rather than adding most people were into adding more and more features to products. And Sony decided to not have any features at all, just to play back music. What a brilliant idea. And it spawned, obviously, the iPod and everything else that's followed. Japan has, I mean, still we buy wonderful technology from Japan and automated production lines from Hirata and all sorts of things. It's a very good place for us to go, and indeed developing battery technology, which we've done in Japan. So Japan has the ability to do it. I take your point about young people not having, or thought not to have experience. Therefore, they shouldn't be in charge of things, and they're not capable of developing new technology or new products. I fundamentally disagree with that. And I've made it my job to only employ graduates at Dyson. We only want graduates engineers and now undergraduate engineers. Because I believe that in this fast changing world where we must innovate in order to survive, and it's very, very competitive now globally, young people are better able to do this. In not having experience is actually a good thing, because you're willing to experiment, you're willing to try something different. And I'm afraid experienced people often know why something won't work. But I believe in naive questions and a certain naivety. I know this is the wrong way to do it, and it's not what the experts say how it should be done. But I'm going to try this way to see if it works, see if I can make it work. So because we're innovating all the time, wanting to bring out new technology all the time, do better and better electric motors. These are tiny new electric motors here, which are new, go to 150,000 RPM, whereas motors are 20 or 30,000 RPM. We're doing something different. There's not much point in having experienced people. You want people who want to pioneer, who are brave and who have no fear of failure. Experienced people are naturally afraid of failure because they ought to know better their experience. But people want them for their experience. And it's nice to have one or two experienced people around, but on the whole, we want inexperienced people. And I think Japan has all the capability to be world leaders in technology and to do ever more exciting products like the Sony Walkman and the Honda 50. It's I think it's a matter of confidence and belief in yourself.
I see.
I've been traveling to Japan for 40 years, and I have a great passion for Japan. And I often think the Japanese are very like the British. We're both very self-effacing and modest. And sometimes that's not a good thing. Sometimes we need to show more confidence and believe in what we're doing.
I see. And 5,127 prototypes, you call it mistakes or experiences or something other than, what is the 5,127 prototypes? How do you call it? What is that? What were that?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. And I talk about that because I think there's an assumption by people that in order to make a product like a new technology electric motor or a wonderful Walkman, you just make it and do it. That's what engineers do, and they get it right first time. But that simply isn't the case. Any new product, any new technology you develop doesn't work. And you have to go through the painful process of making it work. And it can require many thousands and even hundreds of thousands of prototypes before you make it work. And yes, in my case, it was 5,126 failures before I had the 5,127 success. And okay, it looks like a success and it looks like it just happened, but it didn't. It was a series of logical step-by-step development, lots of failures along the way, and then eventually success. And success comes from hard work and determination and the ability to bounce back from failure. So that's why I talk about the number of prototypes, because I think it's an important life lesson. Yeah. And by the way, although it took me 5 years, and I went into the workshop every day, building prototypes and conducting tests, I loved it. It was a wonderful time in my life. It was a frightening time because I was building up this huge debt with the bank, But on the other hand, it was a wonderful roller coaster ride. It was a very exciting thing to do.
I see. Okay, let's go back to the main topic of this book. It's all about, of course, the innovation. And I think the most important essence of this book is page 2. So you said, it is more about accepting failure to be able to achieve the moment of ultimate success. And this is the thing. And can you give us, it would be very happy if you give us a strong message as a legendary engineer, to the entrepreneurs and the business people in Japan.
We're all taught at school that failure is a bad thing. We must get the right answer first time, or we're not a very good pupil. And that's certainly how I was brought up. And I think we need to change that a bit. I think we should encourage people to experiment and fail and learn through failure to overcome that failure, to learn how to solve the problem. And you learn much more if you've done the experiment and you've learned it viscerally. So as you've quite rightly said, a lot of the book is about understanding that life is about experimenting, learning through experimentation, rather than learning through being taught something. And realizing that, to make progress, to do something different, to create wealth, you're going to have to go through failures and learn to overcome those failures. And I just wish that schools, as well as teach, you have to impart knowledge in schools. I get that. You have to do a lot of learning by rote, as they call it. In other words, being taught things. But a part of school, and certainly a lot of university, should be about having an idea and trying to carry it through and learning to overcome the inevitable failures that you come across. And that experience, learned viscerally, will be ingrained in you far more than something that someone has told you.
I see. Thank you very much, Sir James Dyson. So it was a great honor for us, the TV Tokyo. Thank you very much for joining us. Indeed.
Well, thank you. They were excellent questions. Thank you very much, and great to meet you again.
Thank you very much. Great to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye. さようなら。
Bye bye.
ありがとうございました。
最後まで見ていただきましてありがとうございます。テレビ東京の経済ニュース、経済番組をもっと見たいという方はこちらの画像をクリックしまして動画配信サービステレ東BIZにアクセスしてください。どうぞよろしくお願いいたします。